Today's show is brought to you by Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin and Cumulus. Hello and welcome to We Need More Heroes. In the age of Donald Trump as president and Kim Kardashian a role model for millions, it's easy to lose hope. But there are still brilliant people out there who can inspire us to live better. Join me, George Beasley, on a mission around the globe to find them. We Need More Heroes aims to inspire and guide ordinary people to live extraordinary lives. Visit weneedmoreheroes.co for show notes and more info. If you enjoy the episode, please leave us a review and rating on iTunes and subscribe if you'd like to hear more. Thanks for listening. So I'm here at my office in London recording today's episode. I've snuck off to a little booth so it looks like I'm doing something work-related. The company I'm working for is an enormous, beastly financial services firm with over 40,000 employees in 70 countries. The impressive job titles and fancy suits are often the stuff of envy from people on the outside, but actually almost no one I've asked here likes their job, and even fewer of them love their job. It seems like a perfect place to contrast those trapped by security, money, and prestige with the journey of today's guest, who's taken a leap of faith to create a life he loves and make his passion his work. Our guest is an extreme endurance adventurer, potentially the coolest job title in the world. He's done an incredible amount of cool shit. In 2016, for example, the Discovery Channel followed him as he completed the world's longest triathlon, covering over 4,000 miles around the edge of mainland Britain. He's written a number of books, speaks at loads of events, and never fails to inspire. He's adventure through and through and has followed his passion to build a life he loves. The perfect guest for We Need More Heroes. Without further ado, I give you Sean, the King of the Beard, Conway.
Hello, good morning. How's it going?
It is going great, thank you. A very good start to a Monday morning. Having a podcast with you is much better than getting open my normal spreadsheets and doing boring finance stuff.
Well, likewise, mate. I would have been busting my ass up a big hill on the bicycle this morning, so you've given me a much-needed recovery break, so thank you.
So, Sean, to get the juices flowing, I like to ask 3 little instant response questions. So first thing that comes to mind, but you've got to be fast, okay?
Okay, well, here it goes.
Okay, so first one, Batman or Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Why?
Because I had a Spider-Man suit when I was a kid, and I used to climb loads of trees.
Number 2, what did you want to be growing up?
Spider-Man.
Why did I even ask?
I swear, that's not even a joke. I kind of loved climbing trees and everything. How weird is that? It was that or an environmental lawyer, believe it or not. Yeah.
So I do have a third question in this, but I can sort of guess where this is going. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, no, actually, mine would be invisibility, definitely. I don't know. I like people watching. I like being a wallflower. I like sort of being sort of under the radar when I can because, yeah, that's why I live in a forest in Cumbria, in a woodland. And, yeah, I kind of like the idea of being invisible. That'd be kind of cool.
So you're living in Cumbria. What was behind the move to get up there?
Well, I was racing the Route 66 bike race in America in October last year. And at hour 23, I was leading after having cycled 380 miles in that first 24 hours. And I was in the lead. It was kind of flat and I was doing well. I was feeling good. I went on to hour 40, had a sleep, got overtaken. I was then down in third and then hit the hills of Missouri. So at sort of mile 600, halfway through day 2, I just couldn't keep up the pace. And the 1 and 2 were sort of pulling away from me. Sort of every hour, they were probably, half a mile further ahead of me on the hills. And I was just getting pretty frustrated. And then at the end of day 2, I had a slightly short day 2 because I had a couple of 45-minute naps. I'd only done 260 mile, I think. I injured my knee, my quad, because I was just stomping. My style was all over the place and I was just quadding it, stomp up the hills. And I pulled my sort of tendon between my quad and my knee. And I tried to push on for another 300 miles, but dropped back down to sort of fifth place, and then realized I was actually just doing myself more injury. And then annoyingly, I looked on the map and I was 150 miles from anywhere. I was in the middle of Texas. So I had to cycle for 2 days with one leg just to get to the nearest airport, which was Amarillo. I kind of flew home, and I got back to my boat. I lived on a boat on the River Severn near Worcester. And I just realized I needed hills in my life if I was going to be able to compete in some of these long ultra cycle races, because, the Midlands and certainly around Worcester is just dead flat, really. So the spur of the moment, I went online and looked for a flat to rent up in Cumbria. And 5 days later, I moved in temporarily just to do some training and write my books. And I moved here and loved it, and now I'm here.
Awesome. So I live on the Severn as well in Shrewsbury. So what were you doing in Worcester?
Well, that's where I bought my boat. I bought an old World War II gunboat on eBay 4 years ago now. Wow. And it was near Worcester, just down on the Severn, and that's where I bought it, and that's where it stayed. And I fixed it up, spent 3 years fixing it up, and yeah, that's where I lived for 3 years.
How did the idea of World War II boat come around?
Oh, I love the water, mate. Like I need water in my life, which is why I moved to the Lake District as well. And I've always fancied the idea of boat life, but didn't want a canal boat. And I wanted something wooden. I love sort of old wooden things, anything, sculptures, furniture, anything made out of wood. I really love it. And it just was the perfect fit for me. It's got war history, which is great. It's an old RAF boat built by Harland and Wolff, the guys who built the Titanic, which is a bit worrying, but hey ho. And I just fancied boat life. Boat life's amazing. It simplifies your life. You don't collect loads of clutter you don't need. You appreciate your sort of resources and things like that. And you know what? You kind of spend less time at home when you live on a boat, which I like. It kind of forces you to go out and explore and spend time outdoors and things like that. So yeah, I love it.
Have you retained the minimalist ethic after getting off there? Now you don't live on a boat anymore, but did you sort of like learn the value of that, and now you manage not to collect loads of shit?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't buy stuff just for the sake of it. I don't own a telly. I literally don't even have one. Everyone has their little vices. I love tinkering with Land Rovers. I grew up with Land Rovers in Africa, so they're kind of my hobby. So I got a new twisted Land Rover, but I also have a couple of really old ones, which are pretty much falling apart, and I kind of tinker with them. And I have to say that's the one thing I missed living on a boat, is not having a garage to just do my hobby, and I make knives as well. And, having all those tools in a garage, on land, it is nice, but I still don't, buy stuff really. But I have to say, it is nice having a garage.
Yeah. I keep wanting to get onto the main part of the interview, but I can't. Every time you say something, I'm like, what? How did you get into a World War II boat? And then you just mentioned knife building. How did you get into that?
My kitchen knife, I had a big sort of cutting, chopping, axe knife in the kitchen. It broke, the handle broke. And then I was like, I'm going to have to go and buy another one. But it was quite a heavy duty one, and they're quite hard to find. And then I suddenly thought, I wonder if I could just make one out of some steel or something. So I went online, and the knife making industry is huge. There's amazing people creating works of art, in their garage all around the world now through social media. It's great. Social media is bringing back all these crafts, which is great. I thought, yes, I just bought a sheet of steel, went and got a hacksaw and some files. Worked out how to do it. I've literally next to my computer here as we speak, I've got a vice grip on my desk. So I do some writing, and then I cut a bit of metal off the piece of steel, and then sand it down and try and sharpen it and all that. And then I've got a fireplace in my office, which I then use to temper the steel. So I just throw it in the fire for about half an hour, and then it's tempered and hardened. And the coolest thing is, when I was redoing my boat, there's loads of little bits of wood, little bits of mahogany and some teak and some oak that I took off the boat, which I just kind of kept to be honest, it probably was going to land up as firewood, sadly. But actually, I'm glad I kept it, because I'm now using it all for the handles for my knives. So it's kind of cool that I've got 85-year-old bits of this old boat that I wasn't using that are now being repurposed for my knife handles, which is pretty cool.
The manliest pastime of all time. I make knives. And now I have this image of you just sort of like putting a knife together, looking over at your wood-burning stove, and you've got like an old school pipe and you're in a rocking chair with like a tweed hat on.
Mate, I'm all the cliches. I'm all of them. Yeah, that's me.
So let's just backtrack a little bit. This series is all about adventurers, and I'm always interested to hear how people respond to the ubiquitous question of when somebody asks you, "So Sean, what do you do?"
Oh, that's a tough one, because it's a weird kind of philosophy. It's quite a British thing. Like, what, so what do you do? A lot of other countries in the world, people don't ask you that question. They kind of just go like, "How are you?" or "What's new with you?" or what you up to. Like, it's really, I find it really fascinating that it's almost the first thing people say when you just meet someone new in a social situation. But I get, you got to answer it. So I kind of say I'm an endurance athlete. I consider myself more on the athletic side of adventure than the exploration. So, you get people who go and walk through the jungle and explore, and they probably discover some things. And then there's people like me who try and break records. So I'm all about the 3 Fs for me: fastest, firsts, and furthests. I'm more of an athlete, I think, than an adventurer, but people kind of don't really understand what I mean when I say that. So I kind of just say endurance adventure athlete or endurance adventurer. And people kind of understand what that means when I say it, unless it's a really boring party, and then I say I'm an accountant. No, I generally go with triathlete as well. People like endurance triathlete. I guess what I've been doing for the last 4 years is long triathlons. So anything in the sports field, non-professional sportsman, I guess.
And what does a typical day look like for you?
I don't have a typical day, and that's purposeful. I'm not very, very good with routine. I find it makes me really uncreative, and I get a bit bored if I'm doing the same thing over and over. So it depends. I divide my year up. I sort of look at the calendar and I go, right, well, I'm going to probably spend this time writing. I'm planning for an adventure, so I'll do some prep work here, and I'll do some training here, then I'll do the adventure here, then I'll get back and I'll plan a speaking tour, and then get back onto the writing. So there's kind of like an 18-month process really that I quite enjoy, and it starts off with writing the last adventure when you finish, and ends with doing the next adventure, and that's what I like. But outside of the day-to-day logistics of being a non-professional athlete, I try and spend as much time outdoors as possible. I feel better when I go and spend some time outside, but otherwise, I'm either walking up a hill, going for a swim. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, so I try and do as many different type of activities as I can. I quite enjoy trying to learn different things, and then just keeping busy. And I try and get up quite early. I try and get up at sort of 6 a.m, and because I don't have a TV, I'm in bed at sort of 9:30, 10 at night, and trying to make the most of the daylight hours. It's kind of one of the reasons I do this job, in inverted commas, is to have variety, which I enjoy.
Do you think that the jack of all trade thing, do you see that as a strength?
For me, it's a strength, but everyone's individual. Some people, hate the idea of just being average at loads of things. They want to be amazing at one thing, and don't get me wrong, some things I do want to be really good at. Endurance cycling is probably the one aspect where I really think and believe I can be one of the best. I guess if I put my mind to it, which I'm maybe going to try and do this year. I like to learn how to make knives, and I like to learn how to make ale and whiskey and make biltong and mountain bike and ski and snowboard. And, I'm never going to be the best at any of them. But at the moment, I'm kind of okay with that. I'm kind of okay with learning it and enjoying the process. And I used to do painting and drawings as well. But I really wasn't that bothered about the results. I kind of just enjoyed learning how to paint and draw and the process. And then when I'd finished with it, I'd just be like, oh, that's all right. And I'd throw it in the attic. For some things, don't get me wrong, things like, I still want to do the fastest, the first and the furthest. And that is then pushing it to the limit. But outside of that side of things, I quite enjoy just variety, really.
I was asking because I think I'm also in a similar boat. I was never really exceptional at anything, but I could do most things quite well and love to learn in the same way as you did. But it used to frustrate me so much when we were younger, I guess because you're constantly involved in more competitive things. When you're at school, there's just always competition. I did a lot of sports and I was always quite good at them, but never the best. And it used to piss me off. And now I think I have reframed that in that I don't always judge something by how well I do in it. A bit like you just mentioned, it's how much I enjoy it as well. So I don't have to do something just to be the best at it. It's really nice to just learn a new skill and then sort of move on to the next one.
Well, exactly. And then, that's it works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. I don't think there's no right or wrong in it. And you can change your mind, This year, I'm focusing on endurance cycling, and I happily admit I want to be the best for that. Coming second, and when I do my races, when I try and break my records, I am striving for the best in those things. But some things, I'm happy to kind of just enjoy the process. It depends on what I've realized actually a lot in the last few years is it's okay to have moods as well. That's completely okay.
Your attitude seems generally to life quite relaxed. You're quite laissez-faire. You don't like the routine. But I'm interested in how that feeds into your training for endurance cycling, because a lot of people, especially now with the advances in training and sports science and all of that kind of stuff, can require a lot of rigidity and I guess the maybe the opposite approach. So are you still really relaxed in the way that you approach that? Do you just sort of go with how you feel, or do you get a big structured program, go to the best sports scientists and then just nail that?
No, I have a completely different approach to the racing and record side of things. Records are getting harder and harder to break. You may have heard people throw around the term marginal gains a lot, and people understand what that means. The difference between winning and losing an ultra cycling event could be sort of 1 or 2 miles a day more. On these long rides when people are doing 200, 240 miles a day. 1 or 2 miles is the difference between winning and losing. And when leg hair costs you 25 seconds per 25 miles, put that over 250 miles, you're losing a couple of minutes. That's a few hundred meters. So there is that element of it. So I actually do really take training quite seriously because I have to. You can't put in those big miles, and you speak to all the ultra guys, all the ultra runners, the guys are doing the 100-mile runs and things like that and more. There are no shortcuts. You can't wing it. So I work closely now with the University of Central Lancaster. Dr. Howard is my doctor. Shout out to Dr. Howard. Yeah, he knows the stuff. I do all my power tests, my sweat rate, salt loss, heart rate, everything. I go and sort of do a monthly test with him. This is just in training. I don't do it all the time. So I'm there again. When am I there? Next week? Yeah, I'm there next week. And just to do an update on my power and things, and just to see where I am. Lactic acid threshold is an important one for me. I want to be able to recover, and if you push it too hard, your recovery is longer. So there's a lot of science behind it. Nutrition, aerodynamics, everything, that side of things I do really have to take quite seriously.
I'm just interested to hear what the prevailing wisdom is, or maybe what your thoughts on it, because for training for super long distance ultras, it used to be people would just run forever and try and run really, really long distances. And then the CrossFit guys all started doing that ultras, but doing very short, intensive work. You tend to find things go back and forth in almost all fields. So bodybuilding, for example, people used to eat no-fat diets. Then the ketogenic diet came around. Then you get somewhere in the middle. So where are we in like the pinnacle of training? What's the prevailing wisdom, or what do you go by now?
You know what? There's so many conflicting things at the moment. For sport, I think what works for you. You got to try different things. There's the whole paleo thing that people are doing now. That the high fat, low carb thing. Yes, that works for certain blood types. It doesn't work for other blood types. You got to try it out. I'm just a big fan of eating natural food. If you can pick it out of the ground, off a tree, or catch it and eat it, then that's kind of where I stand. Except I'll have rice and pasta probably, because there's still a process to create that. But I think if you're just eating healthy and eating well, that's fine on the nutrition side. Training side, for the ultra stuff, you can't get away with HIIT sessions. It's impossible. The top end, like sprinting cyclists, the track cyclists like Chris Hoy and stuff, they would probably struggle doing a 250-mile ride. They've got the different muscle makeup, and they're doing high intensity, big cardio. Their VO2 maxes, their power to rate. I think Chris Hoy's power to weight ratio is something like 25 watts per kg. Chris Froome's is only 6.7. So it's very different. Exercising and different programs will create a different type of efficiency, And from my experience, there's no shortcuts for the ultra stuff, and the runners will tell you, like the guys, if you're doing a race, I've been told reliably, I'm not a particularly good runner, but I've been told that, you can, if you're doing a race that's less than 100K, you can probably get by without injury on some good HIIT sessions and some CrossFit and various other things. But the guys tell me that, as soon as you're doing the 100-milers and so on, you've got to do the hours. It takes years to build up those tendons and those strengths. But once you got them, they stay with you. Like I cycled around the world fairly quickly, not the fastest by any means, in 2012. And, I'm probably still benefiting now from some of the strength and resilience I got from that ride, which is why you never see a 20-year-old winning ultras, just even though their cardio will be amazing, their muscle responses will be incredible, their recovery will be super, super good. The guys who are winning ultras are in their, mid-30s, late 30s, early 40s sometimes now even, because it takes time. It takes time to build up that endurance, And so for me, there's no other shortcuts. You put the hours in, you put the mileage in. At the moment, I'm doing a training block, and I'm in sort of 3 months away from my next challenge. And I'm trying to do 350 miles a week at the moment. And I'm looking to step that up to about 700, 750 in the next sort of month and a half. So, you just, for me personally, for the ultra stuff, you just got to put in the hours and the miles. Mileage makes champions.
You mentioned that you do the sort of athletic side as opposed to just exploration or adventure. So what is it that you think, what's your strength in athletics, and why do you think you're good at it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I get good after 2 weeks. I've worked out. Like if you put me in a race or an event that's 2 weeks or more, I kind of get into my groove after 2 weeks, really. I don't know what it is. I've realized I'm good at it. Biologically, I'm suited. I'm quite light. My race weight's about 67, 66 kgs, which is pretty good. I sort of recover fairly quickly. I think there's a bit of biology in there, a bit of luck. Thanks, Mum and Dad. I've been doing this for 6 years now. So although that's not that long, it's a lot of, I've got a lot of miles under my belt. I think I tried to work out the other day on the bicycle how many sort of adventure miles I've got, and it's near 50,000, I think. And that's just adventure miles. That's not training miles. That's just going off, and a big chunk of that was cycling around the world, to be fair. But
that'll do it.
That'll be a big chunk, but still, that also helps in where I am now. Is just that experience of when you got a knee niggle, you kind of know this is not an injury. This is just a tight abductor or glute or something.
It's becoming more and more popular, these type of ultra endurance events. We just didn't really have any of them, or certainly not as many of them 20, 30 years ago. But for somebody who's thinking about getting into it, but they haven't done a big event yet, or don't know that much about training for it, what advice would you give, and what resources do you think are great for a noob to ultras?
So depending, whatever your discipline is, so whether cycling, running, skiing, cross-country skiing, whatever it is, firstly, you choose your discipline. So let's say you want to do running. I always say at the beginning, don't don't think about the technical side. Don't even take a heart rate monitor or anything. Don't Strava it. Just go out and do what you want to do because of the love of it. Fall in love with the discipline. That I did that with cycling at the beginning. I just cycled Land's End to John O'Groats really slowly. It took me 25 days. That, which is, everyone will know, is pretty slow. The record's 44 hours on a traditional bike. Wow. And I fell in love with cycling, and in the meantime, it also gave me some base fitness. And then once you've got that base fitness and you've gone for runs and you've convinced your mates to go to run down to the pub and have half pint and run back or whatever, then you can start working. Once you've got that base fitness, you can then start thinking about more technical stuff. You don't have to go and buy crazy trainers and things like that. And then from there, you just decide your goals. Once you love it and you've enjoyed it and you can feel you're getting fitter, that's the exciting bit. Then you choose your goals, and your goal might be a marathon, your goal might be a double marathon, the UTMB, West Highland Way, whatever you want to do. Choose your goal, and then you can start focusing. Then you got to think, right, I need to get my technique, my style, my nutrition. There's sort of 5 elements I always look at for performance if you're wanting to push the big miles. First there's food. You need to eat the right food. Hydration, you need to drink the right stuff and get the right amount of electrolytes in you, which you'll get from food as well. Sleep, sleep's very important in working out. Too much sleep or too little sleep, you need to look at that. Then you need muscle management. That's also very important. Things like stretching, massage, ice baths, physio, acupuncture, whatever you need to look into muscle management. And the 5th thing, which is probably the most important, but it's the one I only added to the list quite recently, it's motivation. You've got to find out what's motivating you and put things in place to motivate you, whether it's raising money for charity or committing to something you've told all your friends about. It's the first thing I do when I have an idea is I tell all my mates, so that if I don't do it, they give me grief for it. So those 5 things: food, water, sleep, muscle management, motivation.
Are there any things within those 5 that you've discovered fairly recently that you weren't using before that now you just think, fuck, this is amazing, I wish I'd have found this earlier?
I'd always looked at all of them, but I probably didn't focus on each of them or realize how important having all 5 together are. You can, if you're doing a long race, if I'm going, Route 66 bike race, if I'd had one of those things at suboptimal, I'm dropping miles. So you can have great motivation, great muscle management, great sleep, great hydration, but if you've got no food, you're game over. You can have everything. If you don't have motivation, you're going to lose or not complete your goal. Motivation's the one that gets a little bit harder sometimes, which is why my next adventure is trying to be the fastest. I've done furthests and firsts for the last couple of years, which is great, but I found not having competition I was losing the motivation, truthfully. When you do firsts, no one else has done it before, so actually, you've got no one to race against. I've realized I quite like chasing people, and so
yeah. It seems natural to thrive off that. We're just sort of wired for competition, and I think especially blokes.
Yeah, and it gives me a reason to get out of bed at 6 a.m. if I know that there's someone else racing me, getting out of bed at 5:30. So I've now got my motivation back, which I was probably, sort of at the end of last year. I was kind of sitting here in my underpants, pretending to be Hemingway in my wood in Cumbria, going like, what? Don't know if I want to do another first or furthest, because furthests also have no time limit on them. You could just go further, really, other than a self-imposed time limit. And that's why I came up with my next challenge, which is the fastest one, which it's now given me the motivation again. So find your motivation, everyone, whatever it is, write it down, put it on a Post-it note next to your bed.
So just to backpedal a little bit, looking into all the adventures that you've done, is there one that you look back at that you're most proud of? Can you tell us the story of the one that you think, yeah, I'm so glad I did that?
Oh, that's the easy one. That's when I swam the length of Britain in 2013. That was the first that many, many people, including myself, probably subconsciously thought was probably actually impossible. But I was just going to wing it anyway. I was just going to have a crack. And that's the one that gave, on completion, gave me the confidence now to kind of go off and do more stuff, and yeah, so that was tough. That was the toughest 4.5 months I'll ever have, I think. Swimming in cold water every day is pretty miserable. I'm not gonna lie. Cycling and running, you at least kind of meet people, and the scenery changes a little bit. And with cycling, you got the downhills. Running, you can kind of stop and sit on a stone wall and enjoy the scenery. Whereas with swimming, you stop, you get cold. All around is pretty miserable. So, but finishing that gave me the confidence I kind of was looking for in my ability to go off and carry on doing more stuff.
Yeah, it's sort of, you just become carved into a new person after doing something difficult. I mean, I've never done anything on that scale. 4.5 months in freezing sea, just swimming every single day. That seems like a good way to carve out some resilience, Sean.
It's awful. I'd love someone to try and do it, because I can help you. If anyone who's listening wants to swim the length of Britain, I'll tell you, you can probably do it in 3 months. I'll help you do it. So drop me an email.
All right, fuck it, I'll do it. So is there anything that you miss about that experience? Like, I'm sure it's incredibly tough, but do you look back and just think, actually, that was brilliant?
I loved the sort of how just like bold me and the crew were. We were just kind of doing stuff that now I probably wouldn't even consider doing, because we were just so hungry. We had so much motivation back then. I miss having that level of motivation, which I've got again now for my new one, but I haven't had it since then, if I'm honest. Like deciding to swim from Wales to Ireland because it seemed like a good idea. That sort of just maverick way of adventuring when no one was really watching it. Yeah, I mean, the media picked up on it nearer the end, but there's certainly, I think I only had 1,000 Twitter followers back then. And that I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that we could just go off and do these things. Now if I try to swim from Wales to Ireland, geez, I don't know who would come out and try and stop me with their boat. Whereas back then I could kind of get away with it, and I kind of enjoyed that,
Yeah, I can see that. And then in all your adventures, what was the moment where you were most close to thinking, I'm really fucked here, like I'm not going to make it out?
There's been loads. On the swim, quite a few times. On the big swim, when I swam Britain, getting stuck in back eddies, being in the middle of the Irish Sea, being, caught up in storms in Scotland. When I did the triathlon, I got sucked out to sea as well on the swim, and there was loads of fog, so I didn't know where land was. I was just kind of winging it. In America, when I cycled around the world, I got run over and suffered a fractured spine and whiplash and concussion. I thought I was going to get mugged in South America on the bike in the middle of the desert. There's loads. Yeah, all over the place, running, not so much. Oh, no, running injury. I'm just not a good runner, as it turns out, and I just get injured. So there's many times where I've just been stuck. I got stuck in a bog, actually, in Scotland when I was running along, and my right leg went right thigh deep into this like quicksand bog. And I was trying to pull myself out, but it was just tufts of grass that were just breaking off. And I remember thinking, if I get stuck here, there's no one knows I'm here. Absolutely no one knows. And it happens all the time. But you know what? We're all pretty resilient. We're all clever. You find ways of dealing with it and coping, as long as you have the motivation. You find the motivation, and that generally gives you an extra sort of bit of power to carry on,
Yeah. And it seems like when you, just from what you've said, when you do something a bit more audacious or something that people think is impossible, that gives you the extra motivation that you need, just the fact that people think that you can't do it. Yeah,
it's great. It kind of snowball effects, the more hardship you go through, in your challenges, the more you realize what you can deal with, if you go and run a marathon, you might do it in 5 hours, and you'll be sore and you might cry and you're going to say, I'm never doing that again. But 6 months later, when the entry, when the London Marathon ballot box comes around, you go, ooh, maybe I can do it in 4.5. Because you realize you survived and you didn't die, and you can go off and do it again. And you see it all the time, and it's great. You kind of forget the bad bits because the rewards are so much better.
We've touched on it a little bit. You mentioned how sometimes your motivation has dwindled a little bit, but when you've had the bigger adventures, it's easy to just keep that fire in your belly. But I think a lot of people look at you as the adventure man who's built this incredible life and who's got a great social media following, and it just seems like you've ticked all the boxes. Do you feel like selling your photography business, going from cutting 12,000 cabbages a day to selling your photography business for £1, and now you've transitioned it and it seems like you're sort of winning? Do you feel like it's enough, the life that you've built now?
Oh yeah, I love it. I don't. My physical goals in life are huge. My mental and physical goals are for me they're huge, and I always try and do stuff where there's quite a large element of uncertainty about it. But everything else in my life, I'm really not that ambitious in having a big house. I actually don't even believe in buying houses. I rent a little 2-bedroom flat. Don't believe in buying loads of fancy clothes, and I'm not super ambitious that way. I just like to lead a simple life, and I'll have a family one day, and be if I can find a little cabin in the woods, and that's ideal for me. So right now I think I'm quite proud, actually, if I'm honest, of the fact that I have managed to change my life around in one way, and that's simply happiness. It's simply happiness. And I used to do it. I don't do it anymore, but some people used to. You get a little piece of paper and you divide your months up or whatever. At the end of each day, before you go to bed, rate your overall happiness from 1 to 10 and just write it in the box. And after a month, look back on it, or after 2 months. And, if your happiness level is sort of around 3, 4, 5, just work out what's making you unhappy and try and see if you can change it. And for me, in my old life, I was just doing my day-to-day existence made me unhappy. I wasn't doing any sport. I wasn't spending any time outdoors. I wasn't doing any of the things that actually I knew would make me happy. Being fit, being active, eating healthily. Those are your core bits of happiness, I truly believe, and spending time outdoors. Where am I going from here? I don't know. I'm going to have another midlife crisis. I worked out at 47 and a half, when my ideas outweigh my physical ability, and then who knows?
In some ways, maybe it makes it more exciting. It's just like the fact that we don't live forever. It's sort of more special because you're going to die one day. Whereas if you could just keep going forever, then it's not. It takes away a little bit of the magic.
Yeah, I already know I'm going to be totally unprepared for aging. So at the moment, ignorance is what's getting me through it. I'm going to just be like this forever. But you know what? I'll make another plan. I've made plans before when things haven't worked out or life changes. And if I've learned one thing from the last 5 years is resilience. And, we're all pretty good at making a plan pretty much and getting on with it. So who knows what I'll land up doing. Mountain rescue, I reckon. That's where I'll land up.
Oh, that sounds amazing. See you there.
Cool way to see out my sort of later years in life, getting involved with things like mountain rescue and RNLI and stuff like that. So that's how I see it panning out. But who knows?
It was really interesting what you were saying then about you just focused a lot on happiness. And I think in the UK, there's just this obsession with owning your own house, not renting. And people think that it's sacrilege to say otherwise. But it's such an incredibly big ordeal to get enough money for a deposit and then to be chained to a mortgage for the rest of your life. And the fact that you said you much more focused on happiness, really, really struck home with me, and something I think the reason why I started this podcast, after you just fall into a life and then after a while just think, shit, what am I doing? Is this am I doing the right things to make me happy? And we don't really spend much time auditing our life, even though it's sort of the most important thing we can do, to stop and just think, am I doing the right thing? Do I know what's going to make me happy? And it's really difficult to try and find out what that is, right? You don't just sort of wake up and there are a few people who think, I just want to be a doctor. I just want to be whatever. But a lot of people are sort of in the middle. They don't really know what they want to do or what will make them happy. And then they don't go and do those things. And it's crazy. I saw a fantastic TED talk by a guy called Sean Aker. He's a researcher from one of the prestigious universities in America. And he talks exactly about how success follows happiness and not the other way around. So we think that we have to achieve all these big milestones to stand out, to be different, to prove ourselves to be worthwhile. And then we'll be happy because we've got this status and money and all of that kind of thing that goes along with it. But in fact, they found that if you're happy first, it makes you, like you were saying, a lot more resilient. It makes you more creative, your greater ability to deal with setbacks, and then that ends up making you more successful. So it's really interesting to see how that paradigm has shifted the opposite way around.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Even that though, that someone's saying, success is the goal then, but actually if you're happy, you don't need to be successful. Like, there's no point. Like, you're already happy. So what, not everyone needs to go and do, be successful in inverted commas, I guess. Some people, they find happiness in having the mortgage and having the security. That makes them unhappy. Makes them happy, because not having that security would make them stressed out and unhappy. And I can appreciate that. That's absolutely fine. Each to their own, really. The difficulty sometimes is people think that, oh, well, I'm just going to quit my job and go traveling and just do nothing and be a bit lazy. Because, oh no, I just want to go and ride horses. So I'm going to buy a horse and go and, ride around the world or something. I don't know. But I still think it'll be short term, the happiness, by just going off and doing something because it makes you feel excited. There's a big difference between just going off and feeling excited versus true, like, deep happiness, And I think you get the deep happiness, and this is not my words. This is, there's many philosophers and have worked this out way before me, but is to find purpose. People throw it around a lot. I want purpose and that sort of thing. But I think people think, oh, well, I need to be the best. I need to go off and, be the best and, be successful if I'm going to have purpose. You don't have to be, My mum's a great example. She found her purpose in caring for the elderly. And it's really amazing to see, she just helps old people in their home, getting in and out of baths, helping them cook dinner. She's not starting a huge charity and, changing millions of people's lives. Like, some people would think, oh, that's what I need to do. All she's doing is she's going out and she's making that one old lady in Gloucestershire have a better day at the end of her life when she needs it the most. And that's given my mum, pretty amazing purpose and happiness. And it's great. I love it. All these people who you think are successful in various ways online, but you realize, you forget that actually that they've probably spent 10, 15 years getting there. There's a famous saying, it says it takes decades to create an overnight success, which is true. You often, we look at the last 50 posts of someone in inverted commas successful and go, oh wow, they've got it so easy, they've got this, but you don't actually realize everything behind. But this is all quite deep stuff. There's actually way more clever and intellectual people than me to talk about it. But if I do say one thing, is if you are a little bit unhappy, there's no point in doing something you hate just on this planet. There's no point. You only get one shot on this rock. You might as well do something you like. And, first of all, eat healthily, spend more time outside, and get fitter. Those three things. Once work on those first, if you don't know what to do, and other stuff will fall into place.
I think that's great. And if I can just add my 2 cents into that as well, there's we don't always know what's going to make us happy. So just like you mentioned before, find out what you're good at and then try and find something that is in some ways meaningful or purposeful. So helping others is a great way to do it. But I think too simplistic again. effective altruism movement who talk about actually you can probably do a lot more good as an investment banker in terms of just earning shitloads of money, donating a lot of it, even if it's 10%, it's still a load of cash. You can do a lot more good because you can afford to employ 10, 20, 30 people to work for a charity. Whereas if you just go there yourself, then you're just one person. And if that's what you want to do, if you're happy as a banker or somebody working in the city, that doesn't automatically make you a bad person. You can still live a very purposeful and good life, but that might not be for you either. My mum is the same as your example, Sean, and she's a nurse and she loves it and she doesn't have these big ambitions, and that's absolutely fine. I think the problem is just where you don't stop to consider what works for you. You just sort of go with the flow because you're being taken along by a busy life.
Yeah, no, exactly. Everyone, each to themselves. The whole world can't work for a charity. You do need people who are excited about being accountants and investment banking. And as long as your happiness doesn't, piss on anyone else's fire, it's not good driving through puddles and splashing people. That might make you happy, but that's making someone else wet. That's not cool, So
that should be on a poster with your face, Sean.
So, each to their own. I'm not going to judge anyone for doing what makes them happy. It can be investment banking, as you said, whatever it is, as long as what you're doing that makes you happy doesn't make someone else unhappy.
So we're on the very much home straight now. Just two very quick closing questions that I ask everybody. So the show is called We Need More Heroes. Who are some of your heroes or people that you've looked to for inspiration?
I guess if I had to choose one, it's a guy called Tommy Godwin. In 1939, broke the record for cycling the most number of miles in a calendar year. He did 75,000 miles in a calendar year, which is pretty incredible for 1939.
Outrageous. And a penny farthing as well.
Well, no, yeah, not quite, but not far off. And you know what's even more amazing? Right now, that record is being broken by a girl called Amanda Cocker, and she would have done 76 maybe more thousand miles this year, which is pretty incredible. Amanda, well done. But against loads, when I got into knife making, thinking my knife was the best knife in the world, I then went onto Instagram and found a 20-year-old kid in his shed in Yorkshire making these incredible Damascus steel mahogany bladed knives, which I was like, wow, I don't know, I am going to blame my tools on this one, but there's people like that, people who've gone off and done amazing things with piano and guitar and whatever, I kind of inspired by anyone who's just gone off and decided to try and, have a crack at something they enjoy.
So the last question is just sort of on that vein. Do you think that heroes are born or made? Is it nature or nurture?
Definitely not born. No chance. No way, man. We're all heroes in our own special way. You don't have to go off and do the crazy thing. You're a hero in your own family. If you doing whatever you do, and you don't have to shout about it. You don't have to wear the cape and the Spider-Man suit and all that jazz. You can. I quite like heroes who just go off and do things on their own and make a difference without shouting about it, which is kind of cool. And so I think we're all heroes actually. Just sometimes some people need a bit of an extra encouragement, to go off and do it. And hopefully, if I can help in any way, that's why I bust my ass constantly, but I enjoy it.
That is exactly what this show is about. It's not just about being the best, the fastest, or the biggest. And you did a way better job of articulating it than I can. So let's hold it there. Sean, thank you so much. And for people that want to check out a little bit more about you and what you're up to, where's the best place for them to find you online?
I'm going to go Instagram. Let's go with Instagram for today. Quite like Instagram is my favorite channel and platform. So at Conway_Sean, find me on Instagram, and send me your messages of what you're up to. I'd love to follow anyone who's doing cool stuff. Send me a message. I'd love to keep in touch with you.
Amazing. The powerful Sean Conway. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
See you, buddy. There we have it. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, spread the love and share it with anyone you think would also benefit from it by sharing it on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag #WeNeedMoreHeroes. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at @WeNeedMoreHeroes and just _heroes on Twitter. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and in fact any of our other episodes, so get in touch at weneedmoreheroes.co. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing the love. And thank you again to today's sponsors, Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin, and Cumulus for making this show happen. You've heard the magic, now do something with it and be the hero in your own story.